Age regression. What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say those words? Was it disgust? Confusion? Maybe even pedophile? I shared these same sentiments before I began this project and often used adult babies as the butt of a joke. But these are real people living real lives, and I wanted to learn more about why they choose to engage in these behaviors. First of all, I think it is important to make a distinction between voluntary age regression and involuntary age regressive behaviors, which appear to be quite common. When most people think about age regression, they imagine a large adult man choosing to pee in a big diaper and making his family shoulder the burden of his inability to cope with the world. While this can be the case, there is significantly more nuance that needs to be addressed. The science refers to age-regressive behavior as a coping mechanism for stress that involves acting, thinking, or feeling younger than you really are. This can take the form of emotional outbursts, changes in communication, and loss of bodily control, among many others. Involuntary age regression is a display of some of these behaviors, generally after a traumatic event, wherein the person does not recognize or choose to act like a child. For example, a person with severe PTSD, when put in a stressful situation, may begin to lose the ability to speak in full sentences, start rocking back and forth, or throw a temper tantrum. What's important to remember here is that these people are not choosing to suck on their thumb or exhibit childish behavior, but are rather overwhelmed by a circumstance and are unconsciously engaging in behaviors that are linked to a safer period in their lives. The hard truth is that all of us do this to a certain degree, whether that be fidgeting with your hands or acting out or whining when presented with a stressful situation. I, for one, tend to pace back and forth when I get overwhelmed, which is technically regarded as a potential symptom of age regression. That said, I do not come to class in diapers and go back to my apartment to sleep in a crib, and I would not consider myself a regressor. All of this to say, age regression is a more nuanced topic than many people initially realize. As far as the history, psychologist Sigmund Freud seems to be the first one to have acknowledged these regressive behaviors. He claimed that regression is an unconscious defense mechanism which causes the temporary or long-term reversion of the ego to an earlier stage of development as opposed to handling unacceptable impulses in a more adult manner. He found that regression was common among children and often stemmed from the distress of an unmet need. Freud stated that when this unmet need was addressed, the regressive behaviors typically subsided. I find this particularly important as it implies that adults who are pooping in diapers aren't necessarily doing it for fun, but rather as a response to distress indicative of a larger issue. This theory of regression as a stress response was exemplified almost perfectly in an interview Andrew Callahan did with a member of the ABDL, or Adult Baby Diaper Lover, community. The interview was conducted while the person being interviewed was wearing an adult diaper and holding a binky in their hand. This individual was raised in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath household with 12 other children. They reported that they were forced to abandon their childhood very quickly in order to adapt to such a high-density, competitive home environment. This rapid loss of childhood freedom and innocence can be characterized as a series of unmet needs which manifested in this person engaging in these infantile behaviors. Psychologist Carl Jung, on the other hand, thought that regression was not inherently a bad thing and oftentimes was just as important as progression. He thought that when regression occurred, the psyche could return to the subconscious to discover something important that might have been lost or forgotten from earlier experiences. Jung made an extremely important distinction that I think is vital to understanding age regression in the modern world. He discerned constructive regression, which is defined as stepping back psychologically to process unresolved issues, leading to insight and personal growth, apart from neurotic regression, which is getting stuck in childlike patterns to avoid reality and responsibility. This is where I want to turn the focus onto the world of modernized age regression. I am now referring to the stereotype of TikTok age regressors, those who buy adult onesies and big old binkies and things like that. This is what Carl Jung would have referred to as neurotic regression, which can be harmful to the individual and potentially to the people in their life. While engaging these behaviors is not downright dangerous, it implies that the person has partially given up trying to cope with their own reality. This avoidance can lead to a stagnation in psychological growth and a dependence on others. Being an adult baby also implies a lack of adaptability, which can reduce an individual's ability to make decisions and function in adult roles. Social media has had a large impact on both the community and public perception of regression itself. There are people on these platforms who endorse age regression as a healthy coping mechanism, who are spouting off about how being stressed is an indicator that you need a binky and a crib to self-soothe. This is wrong, and while I don't have an issue with people using their own autonomy in their own home, I do have an issue with these potentially harmful sentiments being advertised to vulnerable individuals. Avoiding the problems in your life is bad, whether it be with alcohol, age regression, or doom scrolling. Posing these behaviors as if they are healthy is like telling people who are depressed that they should just drink alcohol and party to suppress their own emotions. On the other end of the spectrum, people are claiming that people who engage in age-regressive behaviors are pedophiles and need to be sequestered from society. This is also false. The people in these communities have repeatedly and vehemently condemned those who try to join based off pedophilic attraction. Age regression is not an inherently sexual behavior. There are certainly people who engage in age play. Age regression is a completely separate thing. I want to say that while there is essentially no research on how age play is correlated with pedophilia, and although I am obviously not an expert, because I am bringing it up, I feel the urge to give my opinion. I think that people who find age play a sexually stimulating scenario, particularly the individual who steps into the role of the daddy or the dominant, are suspicious. I think that role-playing a sexual scenario wherein someone is underage or acting specifically childlike is dangerous. All of that said, age regressors distinguish themselves from people who want to engage in age play. They find the idea of returning to childhood safe and comfortable, and do not inherently find sexual pleasure in being a baby or being treated like one. Overall, age regression can be psychologically harmful to the person who is engaging with the behavior, and it can cause an unfair burden to be placed on the people close to them. That said, it is not a community filled with adults looking to act on pedophilia-based fantasies. It is a group of people who have a hard time coping with the issues in their lives, similar to those who spend too much time at the bar or on TikTok. They have developed a coping mechanism that, while being unhealthy, gives them respite from the stress and issues of the lives that they lead. While I am not an adult baby or diaper lover, I was glad to be able to learn some of their perspectives and am content to view them in a more humane way.